Dawn, of all the most ridiculous things that we have ever done and the most ADHD things ever that have happened while we've been recording, this is, without a doubt, far and away, the most ridiculous interview that we have ever done.
It just all fell to pieces.
And it wasn't even our fault.
And it wasn't even our fault. I was just about to say that.
And not because we're saying we are separate from our symptoms, which we are, but because actually the elements were against us.
Yeah, so on this episode, my internet decided that it was just going to give up. Yeah.
And it was when we were both better, but we just didn't want to risk being in the same room just in case there was any germs still lingering.
Yeah.
So this is the last interview we did separately. And Dawn just kept freezing. I mean, there was a very funny point on Zoom where you were just a frozen face and I genuinely couldn't tell if you were just deep in thought or frozen.
It's honestly ridiculous. The worst part is I just upgraded my broadband at home because I thought my old broadband wasn't so good. So I just got a new broadband installed. It's all been working perfectly. And for just some reason, everything started sticking.
It wasn't some reason. It's because we had the most horrendous storm.
Well, that is true.
Like literally hailstones, thunder and lightning. And our guest, well, I will introduce her now because it makes sense to. The wonderful Hana Walker-Brown is an award-winning documentary maker, creative director and author. And she has the patience of a saint.
She really does.
This wonderful person just sat and persevered while we had to log in, log out, send new links. At one point, it is just me doing the interview because Dawn could not get in at all. And yeah, God love you, Hannah, for persevering.
I know, what an absolute trooper. I think the usual 40 minutes that we record for.
Oh, it was hours.
It was at least an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was hours, and we came in and out a million times. And Hannah even said, when I messaged afterwards and said, like, thank you so much for persevering, she said, no, we caused a storm. And that's what we're trying to do. So we connected with Hannah. Well, actually heard of Hannah for a while, but actually connected with Hannah when all the Guardian shit, that terrible article came out, and we really connected then.
Yeah.
And Hannah is an absolute ledge. We really appreciate her support and we are fully behind what she's doing too. So she's put a call out to get in touch with her for a project that she's doing. So I believe that she is doing a podcast of some sort. And as ever, we are all about collaborating. This community is exactly that, and we need to stay strong together.
Absolutely.
So any podcast, any ADHD podcast, like we said on the Boys podcast, just like, the ADHD adults did for us, the more the merrier. The more we can unite, the more we can join forces to fight for this cause. Like, we are all on the same team. So yeah, get in touch with Hannah. What does it say to find
She says, were you diagnosed with ADHD, OCD, autism or dyslexia as an adult? She'd love to speak to you. Send her an email at latetothepartypods@gmail.com.
Yes, so do that. And yeah, I mean, the other thing to note about this episode is just that there's so much there. Like, we love talking to Hannah. There's just literally so much in this episode. And so that's why it was all the more disheartening where we kept losing each other, because it was like, and then at one point it was like, right, should we give up? Should we start again another day? And it was just like, I really don't want to, because this is such a good chat. So yeah.
I was just like, Laura, just keep going without me. Keep going
what
without
question
me.
are we up to? What do we do?
And I would just occasionally pop back in and be like, hello. I think I made it back right at the end well.
You came back for like the last 2 seconds. So enjoy this very bumpy ride on the late ADHD diagnosis roller coaster. And yeah, it's funny. And yeah, just massive thanks to Hannah, who is an absolute ledge. And thank you to our patrons, in particular our gold members who are credited in the blurb description of this episode. We know that times are hard and it's asking a lot to ask for support. And we know that not everybody can afford to, but the solution we've come up with is starting a community platform in which we can chat as opposed to the messages, which means that we've built this community.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's changing is that we're not answering messages anymore. We are unable to continue doing that for free, just because it's time that I'm not putting into paid work. And it means that Dawn is having to work without any support from the podcast, which means that that's all the more work for me, and it's all just catastrophic and we can't continue. So in order to keep getting the podcast out, which will always be free, and our social media, which will always be free because that's what raises the awareness, we need the support of those that can help us, those that we have helped that can help us to get on board and join our community, which will enable us to continue putting out a podcast a week.
And it's a space for you to come to support each other, learn from each other, teach each other, help each other.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And just come together so that we're not alone and we don't have to suffer alone.
And it's really great for me when I can't sleep. Chat to people. It's patreon.com/ADHD as females. There are 3 different tiers. Or alternatively, if you're not in a position where you can sign up to a monthly outgoing, but you would like to make a donation, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/ADHD as females.
Yes.
That's the first time I ever remembered it, and the first time you've ever forgotten it.
I forgot it there. I totally forgot it. So you can buy us a coffee. It's essentially like a tip jar.
It's a tip, yeah.
And you can also...
It's a one-off.
Yeah, it's a one-off payment, but you can. There also is an option where you can donate £2 a month as well, if that's something that you that you feel is suitable for you. Again, that's just as a tip.
Yeah, and if you double that to 4, you can join our community. So anyway, enough of that. Massive thank you to Hannah, and for this ridiculous Thunderbolts and Lightning of an episode. Enjoy.
ADHD as females, ADHD AF, ADHD as females, the podcast.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
Hi, I'm Laura, and
we are
ADHD
AF.
AF. Seriously. We are 2 neurodivergent neighbours who moved to the same street at the same time, at the same age, with the same undiagnosed disability. What are the chances?
Since discovering the enormous impact ADHD has had on our lives and the horrifying numbers of missed and undiagnosed females, it has become our mission to make some serious noise.
We want to use our voices to raise awareness, break the stigma, and share our experiences in the hope that they help others.
So join us for a chat, or as it's called up here in Aberdeen, a blether.
Trigger warning, we will be covering some really sensitive topics, so please do have a read of the description of each episode before listening.
It's important to note that we are not medical professionals, we're not therapists or coaches, we're not qualified to offer advice or support. What we will do is share our experiences alongside resources and information from professionals. We will talk over each other and we will go off topic and forget the point mid-sentence.
We are both assigned female at birth, which means that we can only speak from the experience of life as AFAB people. However, ADHD AF is an inclusive space. Whatever your gender, you are very welcome here.
Yes, you are.
ADHD as females, ADHD AF.
So we are very excited to have a very special guest with us. Welcome, Hana.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
No, not at all. We are so excited to have you here.
We are.
So can you please tell our guests your name, age, occupation, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Hannah Walker-Brown. I'm 33. My occupation is kind of many things, which I'm sure a lot of people can probably relate to. So yes. I always think about it as like the doing rather than the titles, but I guess titles is easier. So I'm creative director of a podcast production company. I'm also an author. I guess my background is kind of documentary, music and audio. And then I also teach a bit of yoga on the side.
Just to sprinkle that on top.
Yeah.
There has to be some zen in all of that. So
I mean, that was why really. And I stopped for a few years. And then recently I've been like, oh, what's that thing that really levels me that I don't do anymore? You know, when you're like trying to figure it out. And then I started doing it again. I was like, oh yeah, that's it. That's why I did that. But I think it is that thing of I like to do a lot of things and I can. Yeah. Not always in a healthy way. Like burnout is quite prevalent a lot, but I think all I can I do. So we'll see how that goes for the next sort of 33 years. But yeah, I guess storytelling is my thing, human stories.
Yeah, in
Amazing.
different forms.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
in all formats. Yeah. And actually kind of taking some big world stuff and making it human. So trying to kind of educate and inform, but in a way that is more inclusive, that more people can have an awareness and ultimately then make kind of safe choices around things like, I guess, politics or sport or yeah, all kinds of things. So that makes sense.
Amazing. Yeah, it does.
Okay, good.
I think that's what you said about how like you felt like, because like you found the key with yoga and then you just kind of just put it down and misplaced it. Oh, this works. Oh, stop.
Yeah, that's my self-destruct, I think. What are the things that are good for me? Oh yeah, like yoga, drinking water, exercise, and I'll just stop doing those. And then I'm 2 weeks in and I'm like, why do I feel like shit? And then someone will say, you know, what's your routine like? And I'm like, well, I'm watching 1,000 things on Netflix, and then I'm getting in a whole bloody, I don't know, searching something, ending up somewhere else. And I'm like, oh, I'm not doing the things that are good for me. But that's like the first thing that goes. It's like, I feel like, you know, when it's that feeling of like, oh, I don't deserve to feel good.
Yes.
Yeah. Then it's like a vicious cycle. And then I get myself out of it. But I'm like, do we have to do this? Like every time.
You never learn. You never learn.
Never.
Whereabouts are you?
Well, I'm in East London. I was born in London, but brought up slightly, I was going to say up north, but you two are really north. I'm in the middle, which is why I kind of have northern vowels. So I say like Bath, not Bath. I moved to Spain for a bit after the first lockdown, just because I found London very, very intense, like energetically, just the whole thing I found really, really difficult.
How did you come to suspect you had ADHD?
Well, it's quite a long journey, I guess. I'd basically been going to see doctors for, I'd say, about 10 years. I've had like terrible insomnia since I was a kid, like very in my own head, big imagination, like clever, absolutely shit at maths. Anything where there was like a right answer or only one answer, I just couldn't get my head around it. Like I remember on my GCSEs, it was all like A's and A stars and then a U for maths. Like I failed the entire thing and everyone was like, this doesn't make any sense. So that, like, I'd never considered ADHD, but I wasn't sleeping. I would procrastinate a lot. I was getting burnout. I remember my second year of uni, I was hospitalised with burnout.
Oh,
and
wow.
they didn't know what was wrong, but I was just exhausted to the point of like, I'd really fucked myself. And I remember I was living in a student house and I was working at the student bar and I hadn't turned up for a shift, and they called one of my housemates who also worked there and she couldn't wake me up. So they had to call a doctor who came over. I then sort of was like coming round, and I was in hospital for I think 4 days at uni, but didn't even think, because I'd been like, you know, obviously going out and partying, doing student stuff, but I'd got really involved with like my uni course. I did drama. So I was like doing all the extracurricular stuff, just like, you know, doing as much as I could because I could. And no one said, you know, maybe this isn't right. Yeah. For so long, I was like, it's just my process. It's just my artistic process. You know, it's just what I do. Like I do all this work and then I feel shit and then I feel better again. But so there was like a lot of things that I was starting to kind of reconcile weren't quite right. But every time I went to the doctor, they'd give me antidepressants or they'd give me anxiety tablets. And I was like, I do feel depressed sometimes and I do feel anxious sometimes, but that's not it. And I think even like some of the side effects of those drugs, I barely ever took any. The only ones I took was when they gave me Valium once. She gave me 2 and I was like, well, that'll be nice for a good night's sleep. But all the other like drugs, just, you know, I didn't want to feel suicidal or psychotic or any of these other things that they had. So I basically would buy them because I'm an idiot, or like, you know, you pay for the prescription and then they just go in a drawer. And that was it. And I just collected all of these things. And it was in 2020 and a friend of mine was going through an autism diagnosis. And she had been through kind of all of that. And she said to me, I think you should have a look at this. Because when I was in Spain, it was like the first time I'd lived by myself. And I think when you're alone, suddenly, you know, you are confronted with everything. There's nowhere really to hide from yourself, is there? It's like if you've got flatmates, they diffuse or you fight or whatever. But also in Spain, we then got a curfew. So we had to be in at night. So then I was like by myself at night or all the time. And there were a lot of things that kind of started to come out that I just couldn't really not face anymore. And then hearing my friend say that, very good friend at the time, and some of the kind of criteria, then I just started looking into it and I was like, oh my God, you know, and it's like, I don't know, I guess getting the diagnosis was like the big relief, but actually realizing that that might be what it is, and having had no reference before, because I think it reached a point where I was like, I'm either mad, like I'm actually insane, or maybe I am just really depressed. And I think it got to a point that I was a bit worried about what I would do. I think, you know, not in a kind of dramatic way, but I was like, I don't know if I can deal with this anymore if I don't know how to deal with it. And
Yes.
at that point, I guess the catalyst actually, so I was writing a book and I would sit for like 12 hours and not be able to do anything, like just almost like paralyzed by
Yes.
not being able to start. And I was like, this ain't right. Like, this isn't even, you know, people palm it off as like, oh, it's writer's block. I'm like, no, this isn't it. It's not that. Just all these kind of things going in. And that's when I sort of started looking into it a bit more seriously, I guess.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you say about lockdown, because there's a lot being said about that. These kind of coping mechanisms that we have unknowingly built around us. So even though, like, when you're consciously recognizing what the problem is, we're sort of troubleshooting and building these bubbles around us throughout our lives. And lockdown just cut right through all of that. We were just stuck as we were, with none of our normal distractions or comfort or vices or whatever, to just actually look back at yourself like, oh,
totally. And a massive thing for me was, and I've done this since I was a kid, I will walk hours in a day. I need to get out and go for a walk. That's how I kind of, you know, get rid of the excess energy that I have, or, you know, if my brain's working really in overtime, I walk and walk. And only being able to do that walk once, or being told I could only do that walk once, that was it. Like that, I really got into kind of some trouble mentally, because I knew that I needed to be able to do that. That's the thing that kind of would regulate me before I even knew about the ADHD. And so from then it just sort of became a spiral. And then I moved to Spain and it spiraled a bit more. And then that was, you know, the start of the good bit, when, you know, going towards a diagnosis.
Getting the answers.
Yeah.
So you were saying it was your friend that was looking into autism. So do you have autism and ADHD?
Well, very low end of the spectrum autism.
Okay.
But ADHD is very dominant. In the
So do you have an autism diagnosis?
I don't have an official one, but the psychiatrist that did the ADHD one said that's what he thinks is going on.
Yeah.
But the ADHD is the thing I talk about because I know that, and I have, do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's not something that I sort of platform, but given that, you know, that was a professional, all the kind of the tests and the talks and, you know, the whole system that you have to go through, he was like, it's likely. It's like, do you want to do that? And I was like, no, not right now. Like, I don't need to go through that whole thing again.
This is enough.
I was like, we'll save that, you know, let's do it all at once.
Common comorbidity, isn't it? Or sorry, I think it's that ADHD is a common comorbidity of autism, but I might have that wrong, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, but and
actually I just feel like there's so much that we don't know, that I'm sure there, you know, I hope eventually there'll be a way that you can kind of combine all of that together, because I think going through a diagnosis is really stressful and it's really intense, and the way that it's structured, I just don't think is very helpful for someone with ADHD. Like, you know, you're waiting for ages. There's like a lot of paper. There's a lot of kind of systems things. And I struggle not getting, if it's just a new instruction that's just written down, I really struggle with that. I need someone to demonstrate. No one's demonstrating. So, you know, you have to kind of figure it all out on your own. And I just think there must be an easier way to do it. But
So on that note, how was the diagnosis process for you?
There's actually a good story. So when I called my doctor from Spain, my doctor in London, I remember calling them because I still was registered there. And I think I basically begged her. I probably shouted a bit, but at that point, I think I was quite desperate. And she refused to even acknowledge it, refused to even discuss it with
Wow.
me. And then someone had posted on Instagram the Psychiatry UK reference letter thing, and I'd seen it, spoken to the friend who had the autism diagnosis and said, do you think this is legit? Do you think this is real? She said she thought it was. So then I called my doctor back and I asked her about it, and she was almost annoyed that I'd found it. Like, she must have known that that was a thing, because she was like, oh, okay, send it over. And in Southwark, where I was living at the time, I don't know if it's the same in every London borough, but it was there. You have to go to a board to decide who they will back or who they will give the reference to for a diagnosis. Because I think at that point there were a lot of people. And she said to me, loads of women think they have this. And I was like, maybe they do. Like, don't doubt it.
Yeah.
And so she took it to a board, and they obviously saw all of my records. So all of those times that I'd gone to ask for, you know, help or whatever, been given antidepressants, anxiety, blah, 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 blah. And my doctor said she wasn't going to back me. And I was like, I can't afford to pay this thing. I was gearing up to kind of ask my parents to help me. And then I got this phone call, and I was at my dad's, and it was just before, was it just after Christmas, maybe like the start of Jan. And this woman who I'd never met before said she was a doctor. She had been in that board meeting when they'd taken it to them. She had argued that she, categorically, that's what I had. And she'd never met me. She'd just seen my records, and she said she'd write the reference for me, and that was it. And I was like, really? When you're just like, oh my God,
I'm gonna cry.
Yeah.
And I was, well, first of all, I was like, is this a joke? And she was like, no, I really, I want to help you. And that was it. And then so she put the whole process through, and then from then I think it was maybe 8 weeks to wait. And then you have to my dad had to do a form, another friend had to do a form, I had to do the form, and then I had my first assessment. It must be about 2 months later. But if she hadn't backed me, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah, where'd you be?
When you think about it like that, you've got this kind of idea of, let's say it's a trend. In its this is true. There are lots of people coming in all at once. So another one, this is hysteria. I'm not giving any time to this. And then a person who is actually educated in what it would look like if a diagnosis was missed to this point. It's exactly that. It's textbook.
That is not even innocent. It's like, it was like innocent until proven guilty. And it's like, we don't have it until I prove you do, but I have the power to prove that you do. So therefore you don't have it. And I'm like, just 10 years of weird drug prescriptions that I'd never take, because I'd never returned for a repeat prescription. So they must have known that was that. But I don't know. So I'm not with that doctor anymore.
Good.
Obviously. So, and luckily, I've been waiting 2 years now for ADHD specific therapy, just because the wait list is so long. Right. And initially they said, oh, it's going to have to go through your GP. And at the time I was still with her, and I was like, oh no, not her. And then they were like, oh no, it's because it's the other woman that wrote the thing. It goes through her. And I was like, well, she's my angel. So she's and she did. I was like, I've never met her, but so I'm still waiting, but at least it's kind of in a system.
Is it therapy that you've opted for, or are you looking into medication as well?
No, I didn't go down the medication route. Initially, I think I felt more confident in my ability to handle it. I think initially relief and clarity sort of overrode everything. I have without sounding like a wanker, quite a deep spiritual practice. I have a lot of tools in my kit that, I'm aware of, that I can kind of implement when I'm feeling a certain way. And then for 6 months it was great, and then for 6 months it was really, really, really hard. And I was like, oh, this is the grief roller coaster people talk about.
Because the point is that first bit is denial.
So
they say that relief and denial are kind of linked together, because you're relieved because you're in denial about quite how hard the struggle is.
And actually it's almost like, you've been waiting for so long for this thing, and then you get it and you're like, oh, thank God. And then it's over, as if you know,
Done
And then it just goes away.
yeah, that's it. Like, oh, fine now. Like, my life's great. And I remember, like, I went for a walk with my dad because I was staying with him at the time, and he was like, "How do you feel?" I was like, "Oh, I feel really good, Dad." He was like, "Oh, that's great." It made sense to me, and I think it sort of made sense to my dad that that's what it was. But yeah, I was, ADHD is my superpower for a long time, pissing everybody off. Which, part of it absolutely is, but I think also then it became my fucking kryptonite, and that was, yeah. And I think there's also this thing of like, it was last year, it was about this time last year actually, and it wasn't COVID, but I got really ill, and I don't know if I just fell into quite a deep depression for a bit, but I spent like a couple of weeks in bed, couldn't really get up. I'd seen a friend just before I went in the hole, and she was like, "Oh yeah, you were not in a good place." And I think I suddenly realized, oh no, these things that happen, they're going to happen forever, because this is why.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like, oh, I'm just having a bad week. I've, put my sunglasses in a safe place, haven't seen them for 4 months. Like, and then, do you know what I mean? It's like, and even just kind of walking into a room, forgetting why I've gone in, or I've gone to cook something, but then seen that part of the fridge needs cleaning, and then there's like something over there, and now I'm like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? But I think it was the realization that no, this is it forever.
It's like this kind of, I always felt like I was going to get past my, because
yeah
dominantly kind of quite emotional, really.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Like, oh, this trauma and all this depression, and then I'm gonna get to this magical place, and then it was like, oh great, this is what that all was. Oh shit, it's gonna be like this forever.
yeah it's really, really hard, because even though the tools, or I guess medication, I don't know actually about medication, so I won't speak on it, but like the things that I do, they're there and they help, but it's not something that's cured.
No.
And there was something someone said to me the other day, which again, if you don't know, like, I love it when people do ask me questions about it when they don't know, rather than just assume. But she was like, oh, how often do you feel your ADHD symptoms? And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, well, like, how often in a week? I was like, in a week? I was like, basically every minute of the day. And that again was quite shocking to me, to be like, oh, that's why that's like this. But it isn't just like, I'm fine. Thursday hits and I'm like, oh, I'm a bit ADHD. I'm like, oh, it's every single minute of every single day. And sometimes it's dealt with, sometimes it's not, but it's nonstop. And she couldn't believe it.
It's wild, because obviously, like, sometimes you're aware of it.
Yeah.
Those times are quite good, because then you can kind of control things a little bit better. But it's the times when you're not aware of it, and it's which is the majority of the time. Which is the majority of the time. And it's only when you catch yourself is when you can help yourself, essentially.
Yeah, or if someone else catches you.
Yeah.
Like, I was at my friend's wedding on Saturday, and it was great, really beautiful, lovely day. But I've just had braces taken off, so I've got metal bars behind my teeth now, and my tongue keeps going up to touch them, so I've got loads of ulcers, and I can't stop thinking about it. Like, that's the thought that plays in my head. I kid you not, every fucking person at this wedding, doesn't matter what they were talking about, that's what I was offering as a conversation. Because when it's just like in your head.
Yeah.
And I woke up on a Sunday morning and I was like, oh my God, I told everyone about it.
Yeah, and then the oversharing, and
yeah. Someone was like talking about dating a footballer, and I was like, well, I've just had my braces off and I've got ulcers on my tongue, and I'm like, oh my God, stop it.
Oh,
but it's fine. Everyone wakes up on everyone at that wedding was like, oh, I hope I wasn't embarrassing. I was like, oh, I'm glad everyone else feels shame, even neurotypical shame. That's fine. I was like, at least you're all in the same boat to some degree.
You could have done far worse than talk about your ulcers, definitely.
I could have. But
listen, I've gone on stage. I've gone on stage to sing with my band, and I've told the whole crowd that I've been for a nervous poo, just because I was nervous and anxious on stage, and I was like, I need to talk. What can I talk about? And I'll just tell them that I've been for a nervous poo. And so the whole place knew that I'd been for a nervous poo.
Did they laugh though?
Yeah, everyone was laughing. Everyone was laughing. It was information that they just didn't need to know, but I couldn't help myself.
It actually hurt my face.
I feel like that's it. Like once it's in your head, and what I did, I don't know if even this is an ADHD thing, but if I'm thinking about something and I know I'm going to see people and it's something I shouldn't say, I really have to sort of talk myself into, like, reminding myself that that's not a good thing to say. Like, if it's kind of a bit of gossip or something, like obviously big secrets, you know, I'm a vault, but if it's something that I've just, you know, I've been thinking about, it's been playing on my mind, and I have noticed I've had to be like, no, we don't do that. And again, I think there are elements of it that do make me sad, I guess, because I wish you know, there's in my 20s, you know, when I used to kind of party a lot or whatever, and when alcohol's kind of thrown into the mix, or, you know, drugs or whatever, and you are a bit looser and you kind of, you know, you don't have as many inhibitions, I probably have said stuff I shouldn't. I remember telling someone his girlfriend was cheating on him. It wasn't even my place to say that. And it was like, it caused quite a big thing. And I was like, fuck, like, I don't think I have to do that thing of like, am I a bad person? I think I'm a bad person. I'm a terrible person. And my friend's like, bad people don't contemplate if they're bad. They just think they're good. And I was like, okay. And then there's so much kind of shame and guilt for all of that shit. And I guess there is an element of like, there's sadness that happened that I didn't know, you know?
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot about, like Sherry Scott was saying, your we people, so like going back to your inner child, you know, or reflecting back to your younger self and kind of giving that person, well, even though it's you, but that younger version of you some love for all the things that you've ever beaten yourself up for, that you've ever been, you know, embarrassed about or ashamed of, because we've all been dragging that horse around, you know.
It's heavy, isn't it?
And that takes us to the next part is what do you think undiagnosed ADHD has cost you?
I mean, like literally, it's, you know, it's expensive as in money wise, because I mean, again, I think this is quite a trait that a lot of people have. I buy food and then forget I have it, to the point where I've set reminders on my phone when things are going off. I'll just put it away and then forget about it and not know that I have it. And it's like so wasteful. Oh, I'll buy a load of veg and I'll make some soups and do this, completely forget about everything. And then it's like, I've got to eat all of this in like 12 hours. Or then I'll make it and then I'll be like, oh, great, that's me for the week. I'll be like, I don't want that. Like, or I've had a bit of a bad day and I'm like, oh, dopamine, where am I going to get that from? And I'm like, pizza. It's like, good, absolutely. But follow through. And then, you know, used to be quite impulsive with money, just not really kind of understand it, I suppose. So that I think it's taken me longer to do things that probably someone not in my situation or with my brain, beautiful brain, has. But I do think it's made some relationships very difficult. Some family relationships, I can look back, like I've been out with some dickheads, but I can also kind of acknowledge my role in some of those relationships, and even if it was like staying for too long, I think there's certain things that, whether I've acted like a dick or they have, you know, and I think, I mean, do you know what the biggest thing I think is self-esteem? I think that's the thing that really kicks my ass, and I think that's the one thing, I feel like that's quite a dominant like symptom or trait of my ADHD. And I think that's the thing that I work the hardest every day to maintain. But you know, those days when you're just so tired and then you just let it slip, and I think it's so much harder to get back up from there. But I think because of how people have responded to me, or the way that I've been in, like, you know, a parent not understanding that, or, you know, thinking I was acting up, or people thinking I'm being rude when, if I'm uncomfortable in a situation, I look like I just don't give a fuck, or I'm not in the room, or I'm moody. It's made relationships very difficult.
Okay, well, this is very strange. We have had a bit of a disaster. The Zoom has been kicking Dawn out all night, and now it just won't let her back in. So we are in our separate houses, speaking to the wonderful Hannah Walker-Brown, having a lovely old natter, and then disaster strikes. And we've been trying to get back into this interview for about 20 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if Hannah never wanted us to darken her door again, but she's here. Yay. Right, let's crack on, because I really don't want to take up any more of your time, Hannah. Thank you so much.
No, that's okay.
So Dawn says we had got to what has undiagnosed ADHD cost you? So we have done that. Do you feel like you covered all of that? Because you were talking about self-esteem was probably the greatest ADHD tax that you felt.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we spoke about food going off. So I think...
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm so bad for fruit. And it's
Me too. Fruit is the worst.
So hard. And it's like, it's there and you know you should eat it, but you never really fancy it. And then you think, oh, no, I will eat it. And then it's like too late.
I remember doing this when I was younger, even like at uni. Yogurts.
Yeah.
Always yogurts. And I remember looking at them tonight and being like, oh, I've got 3 days left on these. I'll have one a day for the next 3 days. But I know it'll get to Saturday and I'll be like, fuck my yogurts.
But it's like when you look in the fridge and you look at the date on something and it's like 10 days out. You're like, yeah to 10 days go.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something, although I say some things you can still eat, but I did once eat a yogurt that had gone past its date and it was not
the one.
No, it was like a public situation and I was like, I had a few seconds. I was fine, but it was like
That's the risk one.
I know, I was like, what, never do that again. So I think someone even said to me, like, fine, yogurt's meant to be fermented or something. Like, I don't know, I was convinced. And because I just felt it was wasteful, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll eat it. And then I was like, no, you cannot.
Never again. Oh dear.
Yeah. I'm back.
Yay!
I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry, it's fine.
Technical difficulties.
We just finished talking about the ADHD tax. We talked about it some more. So it's just moving on to the next question, which is...
What has changed for you since diagnosis?
Do you know what? I would say, even in the really, like on the really shit days when it still feels really hard, I still feel better knowing than not knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's just something, even though it's frustrating and it makes me sad sometimes, I think there's something that says, you know, at least I know what it is. I don't know. There's something slightly comforting about kind of not being in sort of, I don't know, no woman's land anymore and knowing that that's the situation. I think there's certain situations, I think I wrote a post about this. So like, I said it earlier about, I find it very difficult to read written instructions. So I will never look at an IKEA instruction manual ever. Always put things together back to front the first time, but then we sort it out. But even with like processes, and my job is a lot of admin, and I don't know how I've managed to do it until this point. Yeah. But now I will say, I struggle with this. Can I have a demonstration? Or and restaurants as well were a big thing. If things were like quite chaotic, or there was sound coming in, or it wasn't quite balanced in the room, or there were bright lights here, or, you know, things that would just kind of send me into sensory overload. Now my friends can recognize it. And I remember one friend, and it was quite early on, she said, do you want to sit outside? And I was like, yeah, thank you. Because before I'd just sort of struggle. Or the other thing I'd do was drink more if I was out. Like, I don't really drink very much anymore at all. But that's how I would compensate for kind of leveling and not worrying about everything. So I think I definitely make healthier choices now.
It's really good.
And actually, do you know what? It's nice to be part of a community where everyone like gets it.
Yeah.
Like one of the first people I spoke to was James from, they've just changed their name, haven't they?
The ADHD adults.
ADHD adults, yeah. There was something else before, they had a rebrand. And finding people like that very early on who were really kind to me and whose posts I was like reading, I was like, oh my God, like that's me. Or, you know, you guys have got this like amazing new platform, and it's like just hearing other people talk about it, I think I would never have even, I mean, maybe eventually I would have, but knowing I have it and then knowing where to go, not feel so alone, I think is important.
I think there's two things that I've taken away from what you've said, is that when you said having the answer like not being in no woman's land, what I heard, and I don't know if this is what you meant, was like, it's not your fault. The days that are hard when you're like, oh my God, I've done this and I've fucked this up and whatever. At least you know why, and you don't have to beat yourself up to carry the weight of that.
Exactly.
Totally. And you know, there's this thing that I found myself saying it a lot, and I think it's that thing, isn't it? You know, they tell you to like repeat a mantra, then you'll finally believe it. But I keep saying to myself, I forgive you.
Oh.
Whereas before I'd be so hard. I'm still quite hard on myself, but I'd be so hard on myself and actually someone did remind me, like my 100 is a lot of people's 40.
Yeah.
Like percentage wise. And I even have 100 tattooed on me here for that reason, just to remember. So then it's like, but I feel if I'm not like breaking my back on the floor, like giving it everything, then I'm not good enough. And actually,
you see like hurting my throat. I'm getting a lump in my throat.
I know. I mean, but it isn't. It's like, I don't know if I could have lived another 33 years feeling like that. Do you know what I mean? Like that's really not a good place to be with yourself. And so, yeah, a bit more self-compassion, I think, and forgiveness, it definitely
100%. And you know what you're saying about the community, like that is everything. So we found, so James and I have a mutual friend, and he got on to listening to their podcast. So he didn't even know that I was going through the diagnosis process. It was all really serendipitous. Dawn and I had the conversation, and so I passed their podcast on to Dawn, and that's how this all started happening, because that podcast was literally like, the savior of it was like sitting around, like, I'm going through this thing that apparently lots of people are going through right now, but nobody I know apart from Dawn, but we were sort of, just scrabbling through, finding our way. And so that's when we saw the value. And the thing that's one of the many things that's so incredible about that podcast and the work that charity does is the education side of it. So you're really, they're both going through it. So you can sort of laugh at it in that way, but also this is why, and this is what it's all about, and this is what's happening. So useful to be able to pass that on, especially when you're trying to educate other people in your life about it. So for us, from our side, it was like, okay, so we can literally see the value of this. Like this has helped us so much. Like what are we about? And we are more of the feeling side. Like we're not, we're not scientists. The bits that we know are through the boys, really. So we see the value in that camaraderie, that joint experience, that joint understanding, and it is like everyone we speak to. When you were speaking there, I literally could have howled crying just saying, because I was like, oh my god, that's it. Yeah, really, we say all the time to lean into the community, but the value of it, like, it is invaluable to to feel so separate, to have all these people that know what that feels like my gosh, that's everything, isn't it?
But the thing that I always think, and I watched that Stutz Jonah Hill thing on Netflix last night where he's interviewing his therapist, and I was really moved by it, because I was like, the thing that happens, like, when you are vulnerable and when you're like, willing to express what's going on and be kind of upfront about how you're feeling, you give permission for other people to do that as well. So I think by doing a podcast like this, or even like with his doc, I was like, the fact that he's even bringing this to a Netflix audience, someone else watching who maybe has never engaged with therapy or engaged with anything like this will then find some confidence to also kind of be upfront. Oh no, we've lost her again.
We've lost her again.
I feel like she was about to speak and then I cut in and then she just went. Oh no.
But yeah, no, totally agree with what you're saying. And that is the point. It's like the awareness, it works on so many levels, because it's like you're bringing something to the table, a conversation, keeping the conversation going, making more people aware of it, but it's the validation as well. Which is so important. Yeah.
And I think that it's so important to find that yourself, because you're not always going to get it from other people. Like, you're not going to, even the people closest to you, whether that's, sometimes it is because they're not sure they believe it, but sometimes it is just because they don't understand. Or like the media isn't always going to validate your experience. In fact, like 9 times out of 10, it's going to invalidate your experience. And then that was The Guardian. So I think you have to validate yourself, because that's sometimes the only person that's going to be on your side. So I think, obviously there's an amazing community, but you have to do it here first. I'm like, I don't know if this is a podcast, but I'm like touching my heart. But yeah, that's
do you have any pearls for us of how to do that?
Gosh, it takes work, I think that's the other thing. It's hard, isn't it? It's like trial and error. Yoga definitely helps me, but that helps me get everything in my brain into my body, so I can start to kind of figure it out. exercise really helps me. Obviously, drinking enough water, eating right. The other thing that I found is not just kind of ADHD community, but hanging around with people that really see you for you. So like, you know, your core people, not necessarily loads of people, but just someone that reminds you of like your goodness, I think.
Yeah.
That helps. And I think like for me, it helps to like journal, write everything down. All those things people tell you for self-love, you know, you can kind of roll your eyes at a gratitude list, but I think sometimes it does work when you're like, oh my God, actually, quite a lot of things. And it's the last thing you want to do when you feel like shit. But actually it's what I've found is it's trying to build those habits in so that then they do just kind of become second nature. I say that, then I'll have a week where I'm like, oh, nothing works and I'm going to eat this and I'm not going to exercise. But it's those moments where you really need to kind of dig deep, isn't it? And remind yourself that, you know,
it's like practice, isn't it? It's like daily practice of trying to do that. And I think the problem with, well, there's two things going on, isn't there? Is like a lack of self-worth. It's like we were saying, like, I don't deserve to feel good. I don't deserve to put this in myself. It's also the fact that a lot of ADHDers struggle with routine. So trying to make a habit out of good habits is in itself quite hard when you don't have a habitual brain, like, you know.
I think something that I've noticed is, you know, like when it comes to journaling and stuff, like I'll buy diaries and then I'm like, oh, that was a waste of money or whatever. But something I've learned is that it doesn't matter if, you know, you miss a week.
Yeah.
Like just like in the past, I would have just given up. I'd have just been like, well, I've missed a week. I've missed a week. I've not kept up with it. I'm just not going to bother doing it. But now I've learned that doesn't matter. You can just come back to it whenever you can pick it up again. Just because you've fallen off the horse doesn't mean to say you have to stay off of the horse. You can get back on. And like I've been buying diaries with dates, and I've learned that you can actually get journals that aren't dated. And so therefore, if you miss a week, if you miss 2 weeks, if you miss 3 weeks, it doesn't matter. So now everything going forward is undated.
I think that's so true though. It's that thing of like, you say, right, that's it, I'm going to keep it. Yesterday, for example, I've started cold water swimming and I saw someone had done like so 3,000. Yeah, right. Also very, very helpful. And I read an article, some guy was swimming every day for 3,000 days. And I was like, oh, I think I'm going to swim every day for the next year. And I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, I feel 30 for me is probably a good place or 7, you know? But it's that one day I miss, I'd be like, oh, I'm a failure. I'm an idiot. Like, I don't deserve to swim. Like, just, and where that spiral goes. And I'm like, just do it. For no reason other than you want to do it. Like, no number, do this. Like, it's nice to have a target, see if you can. But yeah, it's funny that just how hard we are on ourselves for things that we have imposed. In the grand scheme of everything don't really matter.
It's perfectionism. It's also all or nothing. It's all or nothing. If
it's on someone else, if someone gives me a deadline that I have to meet, I still might only do it the day before, but I will stay up 24 hours and get it done, and it will be there. If I impose my own deadline, like this, writing a book was like the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life because it exacerbated all of my symptoms. I was like going through the diagnosis at the same time, also trying to kind of explain to people. But I was like, wow, they were so patient with me. Like they were so patient. I was so lucky to have a publisher that was happy for me to do it on my terms, because they were like, right, we usually do it chapter by chapter, this by this. And I was like, that ain't going to work for me. I was like, I don't write things in order. I wrote chapter 9 first and then I went like back. So they let me just do a full draft. And that was what I handed in. But I think if that had been another situation, someone hadn't been that accepting or had kind of allowed that, I probably wouldn't have had a book. But again, those self-imposed deadlines, it is that perfectionism and criticism.
If you set yourself an unachievable goal, or let's just say you go like, right, I've got to write 3,000 words by tomorrow, and like that involves you staying up for 24 hours, maybe bit by bit, if we're believing that this is a process and a process at which we're going to get to acceptance, then maybe at the 20th hour, the first time around, you might go, oh, this is fucking ADHD. Do you know what I mean? And maybe
Yeah.
awareness and like bit by bit, like self-inventory, self-awareness, like maybe we'll get there.
Yeah, maybe. Although, saying that, there's something I kind of buzz on about doing those full late night stints when you just get into that zone. And I'm like, no one can touch me. I'm like on a roll. I was like living with a friend last year and was making a documentary podcast. And I was making the music until like 6 a.m. I was just there. And she'd get up for work and she'd be like, have you been to sleep yet? I'd be like, no, like, don't even come into my focus. And then even though I'd be up all night and then have a few hours sleep and then go to work, I was like high as a kite.
Yeah.
I was into it until obviously, the inevitable crash. But there's something quite like, it's the adrenaline. Yeah. It's quite intoxicating.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is because you're running off adrenaline. We've done it like last few weeks. I did the website, launched an e-commerce store in literally 3 days. I did 3 days. And then
the whole website designed from start to finish and launched.
And then Dawn was doing our community platform all day yesterday. I clocked up. I was up all night trying to sort out this booking system. So then I went to bed. Dawn got up. It's like we like crossed paths in shifts.
Yeah.
I went outside, came back, and then you were like, right, that's me.
I came out in like hot flashes and everything. Like at the end of it, I was just like, oh my God, like I'm like, there's something wrong with me. Like my hands have all gone cold. Like I'm having like cold sweats here. I think I need to stop.
I think it's that thing, isn't it? It's like when you've been in like a nightclub all night and you come out of the doors and you suddenly realise that you're not in that space anymore, and then you're cold and you're shivering and there's like people and it's light and like creature.
Yeah.
Right. Where are you at on the late diagnosis roller coasters?
I think I always feel like I'm going sort of back and forth. But today I feel really, the last few days, other than, the ulcers on tongue, braces story shame from the wedding. I've been feeling quite good. I'm feeling quite at peace and accepting, and I think I've been able to actually for maybe the first time really start to kind of find a routine with some things and making sure that I'm going to exercise and I've there's people that hold me accountable if I don't, or just say come on, you can do it. And I don't know, I feel a lot more at peace than I have for a long time. I think this time last year I was the bottom of the bottom, and I don't feel like high and excited and everything's amazing, but I'm just kind of feel more accepting, I think, than I have for a long time.
That's fantastic.
Nice. Yeah. Yay. But it could all change any minute.
Talking of change, if you could make any changes to the diagnostic process, would you, and what would they be?
Yes, like first of all, that doctor I had do you know what? The NHS
get it in the bin.
I think, mental health, neurodegenerative disorders, disease, still so misunderstood. And I think expecting a GP to have an awareness of all of that, plus everything else, plus the way things are going, is quite a lot to ask. I think there needs to be, I mean, I don't know, if I could change anything, it would be more money, resources, people within those positions, because it's so difficult in 15 minutes. You need a therapy session to kind of unpack a lot of this stuff in the beginning, I think. And therapy's expensive, wait lists are long. And I think it's that. And also just this idea of, no, you don't have that, before you can even really talk about that you do. I think there's a whole
defending yourself.
I think, to be fair, after that, although there was a lot of paperwork, I did think, I felt quite lucky in how quickly mine progressed. And then even the follow-up after that, and then the follow-up for therapy, those things, and every time I was told, this might take a while. So I was informed in all of those stages afterwards. But I think the lead up to that was the thing that was just really difficult. And I see why a lot of people go, do you know what, fuck this, I'm not doing it. Yeah. Or I'm not going to another doctor to prove myself, or I'm not having another argument with someone, or, you know, taking another batch of antidepressants that aren't working, because that's not what the root of the problem is. It's a symptom of the problem. So I think that's quite a big ask, isn't it, in the world? But
we're not ever going to get there if we don't talk about the possibilities. Does it actually have to be as complex? And it doesn't seem that it does. And so that takes a lot of time and a lot of resources. So if the wait is too long and the resources aren't there, then it is the system that needs to change, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think we're still at, you know, it's getting better, but we still don't, you know, we look after the body, you know, blood, broken bones, you know, we know what that is. We know not to harm it. Broken brain or, you know, disordered brain, we can't see it. It's very hard to, it's quite conceptual. And I just don't think we're at the same, mental health's obviously got more and more kind of mainstream, more people are talking about it, but still not at the level where it's taken seriously enough that funding is going there, or more people are being trained there, or it's being resourced properly. And I think that's a problem. The other thing that I think is really important is just more nuanced reporting and articles and media representation, because I think if you only show one side, that also means that a lot of people aren't seeking a diagnosis. Or like we said with that Guardian article, when you minimize it, it stops people from seeking a diagnosis. So I think everyone has a responsibility, media, medical, and I guess even us as people that have this and have platforms to some extent, like just to keep talking about it. And I notice it's, you know, I want to talk about it all the time. And if I kind of take time and I start posting about it, and it's, people always say it's very helpful, but then I get that thing where I'm like, oh, I'm bored of Instagram, or I feel self-conscious, or something else kicks in and I'll go away and do something else, and then I'll come back and do it again. But I think it's kind of on all of us to be that change.
Exactly. That's so true. And you know, it's funny because we, as I've said, I said when we weren't recording, but we have been working behind the scenes to try and get some sort of answer from the Guardian, just apology and acknowledgement, and there's been none. The only thing that I had back, which was through a contact who said something along the lines of, we don't do tit for tat. We don't do retaliation. It's been too long. This is now like 2 weeks or something. It's been too long. But what we could do is talk about these girls' merchandise.
Oh my God.
I was absolutely fuming. I was
oh
just
my
like,
God.
Why the fuck would we talk about that? Like, I'm not being rude. Like, we're so happy that the lovely Rebecca came to us and had this lovely idea for jewelry, because we didn't want to go and just get a load of t-shirts from some factory. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only thing that we're doing. But that is not what we're about. And
that is so outrageous.
Isn't it?
I think we should write a counter article.
We should get our heads together.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely be up for that. I'm going to start a Substack newsletter about this. Not about the Guardian, but just my personal experience going through it, just because I was like, what can I do? What can I do that's helpful? But I think that needs to be like 100%.
Yeah.
And
because what it's
post it everywhere.
Yeah, what it's about is setting a precedent for what is acceptable, what is morally acceptable in the discourse about a brain disorder. And if you're going to print anything other than what is morally acceptable for any other disability, then it shows that you do see it as a disability. Which legally is. So, okay, not everybody likes the word disability. It's not a dirty word, but I understand why some people don't want to see that in themselves. But the fact remains, legally, it is a disability. And no other disability would be disregarded in the media like ADHD is. And
also there was no acknowledgement of the impact, like the wider impact that can have, because it isn't just about the individual. It isn't just about adults. It's also about kids. If you minimize that, you stop, schools stop creating spaces where kids can thrive, workplaces. Like there's a lot of things that need to be implemented in order for people who have ADHD to even be able to do their job a lot of the time, especially when everything's online. You're not seeing people, that you're at home, which is like really distracting a lot of the time. And I just think it was really irresponsible. And the fact they said tit for tat, and I'm like, this.
Yeah, and he said 62 pages of people's responses of how appalled they were, how distraught they were, the damage that was done. No acknowledgement, none. Like, my goodness, what is it?
It's so disgusting.
We'll carry on trying.
Well, that's it. Just can't let them just sort of
just
sneak
ignore
away.
us and hope that we go away. Yeah, exactly that. Right, what are we up to? Tell us some positives. I think you have told us some really lovely positives in the self-forgiveness. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I think that's the biggest one. And I also, I do credit it for a lot of the amazing stuff I've done in my life, and, the kind of the level of empathy I have for other people, and, for all the kind of friction it's caused in relationships. It's also allowed me to really nurture some amazing ones, and with strangers as well. Like, I was the person people will tell shit to, even at a young age. Yeah, right? Like, I'll be the only person sitting on a bus and someone will come and sit next to me and start talking, not in a like a creepy way, but just in a like, oh, you feel safe?
Yes.
So I think, and creativity and imagination and all of those things, communication, I guess also for all its sins, feeling a lot, like having heightened emotions. I would much rather have that than not feel anything, or just be on like this baseline. It is a roller coaster, but I do get the highs. And they're really high. So, yeah. I mean, someone said, if you could not have it, would you? And I think that would change on the day. But I think ultimately, I probably would. I'd keep it.
Yeah. I think it's a tricky one. But what I will say, because I've got a friend who was sort of thinking that she might have it, and really, then you get that anger and that hurt, and she was like, like, what other kind of life could I have had, and that kind of thing. And I said, but my love, my God, we have lived.
Yeah
the things we have done.
That got me. Yeah
lived. Like, nobody could say otherwise, and it's been scary and intense and terrible and amazing and brilliant and awful, and that's what life is all of the things. And with us being enthusiastic, risk-taking kind of people,
and
things.
And it's, I don't know, sometimes, and I've heard myself say it, if I'm like, I wish I didn't care so much, or I wish I didn't need to be brave. Like, I wish I just had like this, I'll say normal. I don't mean like, I don't want to say normal because that's not quite right. But if everything was just kind of on the same level, and sometimes I crave that. I just, but then I'm like, do I? I don't think I do. Like, I want to be brave, and I want to feel it all, and I want to like fuck it up, because then you just don't get that really rich experience, like you said, and live. I want to feel alive.
Yes. And
with that always is pain. Like, you can't have one without the other. Like, obviously uncertainty, which is like really difficult when you're trying to make a decision. And I'm like, I don't know which one to take. But it's like, that's the kind of bargain you make, isn't it? In life generally, like, you can't have the good without the bad. But yeah, some days I'm like, why? But I think now I'm reaching a point where I'm like, this is it, and this is okay.
That's lovely. That's really, really nice. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I don't think so. I've just had such a nice time.
Despite about 17 cut-offs and all.
I know. I don't even mind. I'm like, it's just really great to chat to you guys. I'm like such a fan. So
we lost Dawn, but like we said, we've had to get her to do little interjections. So in the editing process, she could just do a little, I agree.
Yeah. I know if you put this video anywhere, you'll just see her keep like popping in and out of different positions. I'm quite into it. No, I think that's it. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Listen, sorry for all
no, don't worry. It's
craziness
fine.
that's gone on with us, but thank you so much for persevering, because honestly, she's back for the last 2 minutes.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry. It's fine.
We are about to run out of time, and we don't want to take up any more of yours. So thank you so much.
No, that's okay.
With us.
No, pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And if you need anything else, just let me know.
Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you so much. We'll definitely be in touch. And let's
cool.
Get to the Guardian, right?
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you.
Right, lovely.
Cool. All right.
You so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
So what an incredible shambles of a fantastic, informative catastrophe of a podcast episode was that?
Yeah, it was nice to go back and then listen to it, the parts that I missed, and be like, oh, right, okay.
That's what went on.
I was like, oh, I missed that bit, but that's really nice. That's good, that's interesting.
Honestly, that woman, she is something else, isn't she, though?
Patience of a saint.
Patience of a saint. So interesting.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just... I think what really resonates is that really difficult balance of like, if the way that your ADHD can present to you is that you're a push, go, go person, is like, where do you draw the line between like driven and like basically abusing yourself, for want of a better word? Especially with hyperfocus. It's almost like there's two things at play. Like what kind of hit home for me is like, you know, like we've said so many times, if you've taken on this belief, if you have low self-esteem that you're not good enough, then you've always got this drive because you've got something to prove, or come on, like you're lazy, crack on, do another 10 hours or something. But then on the other hand, you've got hyperfocus. Yeah. So you don't realise the time that has passed. So yeah, it's super interesting about self-care. I mean, bless her eating the yogurt because she didn't want to waste it. I mean, she made herself ill. Like... Oh, Hannah, we love her so much, and she's doing amazing things. So thank you so much for talking to us.
Yeah, and we definitely look forward to working with her in the future.
Yeah, 100%. All about the collaboration with the community. Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. So, Dawn, what's the most ADHD thing you've done this week?
Oh, God, right.
Well, we could talk about this situation right here that you just divulged.
Which one? Oh, well, right now. I mean, there's a few, to be honest. Right now, my keyboard for my computer has run out of battery, and I don't know where the charging cable is, so I can't get that charged up. I've got a cordless mouse as well, and because I take my laptop to uni with me, don't know where that is.
You don't know where the mouse is?
I don't know where the mouse is.
It's on an
somewhere.
adventure.
But the one that I was remembering was when we went to get our lovely new tattoos.
Yes! What is it called? The tattoo parlour again? Rebel
Ink, yeah. In Aberdeen. So
and the
wonderful Kilo Alpha, Kirsten, who did our tattoos. She's just fantastic.
So fantastic. It literally did not hurt. Mm-mm. She's incredible.
So gentle. So yeah, when we went to get our new tattoos to celebrate our 200,000 downloads, we parked my car somewhere that I had to pay for parking, and I said, right, we need to remember for me to top it up when it runs out. So the first time it ran out, topped it up, that was fine. Yeah. The second time it ran out, I got a text message saying your parking is due to run out in 5 minutes. Obviously, somewhere in that 5 minutes, distraction came, and I forgot to top up my parking. So I was like, no! So for, I think it was at least two hours, my car was sitting with no parking paid for. So we had to do that sneaky thing. Well, not sneaky, but you know, like the apprehensive. Yeah. The apprehensive.
Has it got a ticket? Has it got a ticket?
Has it got a ticket? Is there something there? But thankfully, I managed to get away with it, and there was no ticket. But I do it all the time. It's like parking's run out, top it up. Nope, forgot.
That's exactly that's not exactly. That's the opposite of what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say that when we were looking at what tattoo designs we were going to get, so obviously we got our logo ladies that basically symbolise us, that's on the cover of the podcast, and sorry, I'll get there in a minute, my brain just fell out of my ears, and we wanted them to be similar but different, because we are, and it's symbolic also of the podcast, how we say ADHD presents differently in every single person. So we had these designs, but we knew that we wanted a dopamine molecule in there. So I go onto Google, do Google Images just to make sure I've got it right. But you know how Google Images sometimes throws up different images that are related to the image? So we very nearly got the wrong molecule tattooed on us.
Yep.
But luckily at the very last minute, I was like, hang on a minute, do you know what? I'm just going to check. I'm just going to make sure. It was a completely different molecule.
Yeah. So very, very, very fortunate that Laura suddenly decided to check this, because we would have had something similar to the dopamine molecule, but not the dopamine molecule. And both of us, because I had looked up a dopamine molecule, like I wanted flowers and stuff around mine. and mine was incorrect as well.
Yeah.
So both of us had the incorrect
But
molecule.
then they really, truly would have been ADHD AF tattoos.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
That wasn't even the one I was going to tell.
I was about to say there's another one, isn't there?
I wasn't even going to tell that one, but so I am premenstrual. Ladies who are on medication will know that, or not on medication, basically.
Is this something different from the tattoo one?
Yeah, what was the tattoo one?
The fact that you were late?
Oh yeah, I was really late. I thought it was half an hour later than it was. And so I literally had to just jump out of bed, throw anything on that was near to me that was not appropriate dressing, and not put a brush through my hair and run out, or we'd have missed the bloody appointment. But so I'm premenstrual. And it obviously the hormones exacerbate the symptoms, and also I just think maybe they just make your meds not work or something. So yesterday I was making dinner. I got out the whatchamacallit?
Tin opener.
There we go. and I literally, I'm not kidding you, I could not figure out how to use it. Like, not even a clue. Like, I couldn't. I mean, it is a strange tin opener. It's like two wheels next to each other, so it's how you attach it onto the can is a bit strange. It's not as you would imagine. It sort of cuts the top off. But literally, I could not figure out how to even attach it to the can. I tried for 15 minutes, and then in the end, I, most ashamed, had to go and ask Big to open it for me. And the thing about that, people, is that we've had the same tin opener for 4 fucking years. I use it every single week.
Oh, Laura.
I know.
Oh, bless. These things happen. It was quite a week for things, ADHD things that we've done. So there you go.
But we love our tattoos. We're so excited about them. I keep thinking mine's going to wash off or rub off. Like, when I wash it, I think I'm going to like smudge it. It just won't stay in my head that it's going to be there forever.
It's so funny. She was telling me she's sleeping in the bed with her arm out of the bed and everything. And I'm like, literally, because I'm clarted in tattoos, I like, put the cream on like when I remember, if I remember, and kind of just leave it and don't really think about it.
I'm walking around with my arm out like something's going to happen.
It's just going to like wash off in the shower or something. It's not.
And there's our differences. We haven't done differences for a while, have we?
Yeah.
There you go. So we should probably shut up now.
Yeah.
But thank you so much to Hannah. Do remember to get in touch with her for her project, because she is an award-winning, wonderful legend. So whatever she's doing will be fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just are so grateful for her for supporting us the way that she is. So thank you so much,
Thank you, Hannah.
We love you. And thank you to everyone who is supporting our community. We won't bang on about it anymore, but you are quite literally making this podcast happen. So if you can get involved, we really, really would appreciate it. And hopefully Dawn can put all of her non-uni time into ADHD AF, because the things we can do. I've got something else I want to say, but it's too long.
It's not. It's okay.
Yeah, the thing I was going to say is completely random, but I was just thinking about, I was speaking to a friend about all the different things that we want to do with the podcast to raise, well, not with the podcast, but all the things we want to do as ADHD AF to raise awareness and to push the message and going forward. And I explained it all to her, and she went, gosh, that's really funny how you've just put that all together in a package, because absolutely none of those things are related to each other in any way, shape or form. And so it made me laugh so much. But then I was like, do you know what? I've found a positive. Non-linear thinking.
Yeah.
As much as that can be difficult, look at the doors that it can open.
Absolutely.
So bear with us. Please support us if you can, because we've got big plans and none of them are related.
And on a final note, we have some new merchandise that is in our shop and that is available. So please check that out at ADHDasfemales.com. In
the merchandise page.
Yes.
The F-Mate and Bow jumpers are a fundraiser for the ADHD Adults charity. You've got an inspired by the totem concept. You can wear our heart on your sleeve. And remember that you are not alone in your struggles. You are separate from your ADHD symptoms, and the whole leopard print army is right beside you.
Absolutely. And on that note, we should probably get going, because we've chatted enough.
Yeah.
As always.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Look after yourself. Look after each other. Be kind, compassionate, and all of that jazz.
Big love.
Big
Hopefully
love.
chat to you in the community.
Bye.
ADHD as females, ADHD AF, ADHD ADHD as female.